Well, there is a lot of digital augmentation of the Offspring, but
Yeah.
not at all what I thought. It is played by this Romanian basketballer, Robert Brzezinski, who has a particular body shape and neck shape. You know, he's incredibly skinny and
His
tall.
neck is so big.
And
He's so big.
yeah,
Like, it's so
but
strange.
he is like so perfectly cast as the Offspring and so perfectly performs some of these shots. And then Legacy's work on this suit is just, oh, it's beautiful. It is like, it's like a person who, it's like a, I would say it's a creature effects designer's wet dream. And then a person who loves watching creature effects films, wet dream as well. Honestly, The Offspring and the way it's played by this basketballer, I just love it.
This podcast is brought to you by Befores and Afters magazine. Befores and Afters magazine is the monthly print mag from VFX journalist Ian Fales. Go in-depth on key visual effects topics with major VFX supervisors, artists and studios. Each issue covers a different area like creature animation, miniatures, onset VFX and VFX tools. Find your copy at beforesandafters.com/magazine.
This podcast is also brought to you by Hugo's Desk Nuke Compositing course. Join today to have access to 150 pre-recorded classes, 50 hours of training, using real production assets covering industry standard techniques with over 200 gigs of showreel material and access to a private Discord channel with over 2,300 students. This course is endorsed by Foundry and has access to a Foundry student license paid separately. Join today at hugosdesk.myshopify.com. And now on to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to the VFX Notes Podcast. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, and as always, I'm joined by Hugo Guerra from Hugo's Desk. Hi Hugo.
Hi Ian, how you doing? How's it going?
Good. Guys, if you're watching this, you must know this is part of our new way of doing the VFX Notes Podcast, where we're doing seasons. And right now you're in the VFX Oscar race season for 2025. And we're going to be talking about Alien Romulus. Hugo, I'm so excited about these seasons and something brand new we're doing with a special VFX Notes Patreon.
Yes, absolutely. We're really excited to announce that we now have a brand new Patreon just for the podcast, where you will find many extras. We're going to have special videos just for the Patreons. We're going to have special articles. We're going to have a lot of content that will be just for the Patreons. And also it's a good opportunity for all of you to contact us and to submit questions and also to submit suggestions as well for the show. So we find that this is going to be much easier than having a Patreon for Hugo's Desk and a Patreon for Before and After. We just have one single Patreon. If you're a fan of the podcast, if you're a fan of the show, you can go there and get your money's worth of VFX Notes Podcast, you know.
Yes. And you can find that at patreon.com/VFX Notes. So please check this out. We'd love your support. We'd love you to be on the Patreon and be part of our VFX Notes community. Where there's going to be a lot happening. You're going to get weekly extra bonus content, but also Hugo and I diving in and chatting to you all.
Yes,
so I hope you
absolutely.
enjoy that. Hugo, let's grab onto our hats and jump into Alien Romulus by Fede Álvarez, a film that has so much kinds of visual effects and practical effects and special effects discussion, partly because, of course, it's in the Alienverse, and you know that has its own history of puppets, monsters, visual effects, CGI, great optical compositing, miniatures. Oh my God! The history of Alien and Aliens is almost a history of modern visual effects in some ways.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
This film kind of does it all. So we're going to get deep into the effects detail. But as we always do, we talk about what we thought about the film. And Hugo, I'm going to let you go first here. It's risky, but I'm going to let you go first.
what can I say, Ian? I'm gonna just start by saying this. Like, I'm a huge fan of Alien, like in Aliens 2 and Aliens 3 as well. People hate Aliens 3, but I do love Aliens 3 as well. Big fan of the franchise. I also love Prometheus. I know everyone hates it. So I had big hopes. Like, I'm a huge fan of this director. You guys know I love horror movies, and so I loved Evil Dead's remake, and I really liked Don't Breathe. Didn't saw The Girl with the Spider Web. I didn't saw that film, but he also produced Don't Breathe 2. It wasn't as good, but so I was really hoping, because especially with Evil Dead, it's a scary movie. It has a lot of jump scares, and I was kind of hopeful that he would gonna bring, a lot of scares into this film. And I don't know, my experience with the film was, I liked it, but I also think it's, I am a bit split. I think it's okay. I thought it was I wish it was, I don't want to sound like an annoying person. I know how hard it is to make a film. It's really difficult. Directors, it's a huge thing. There's a lot of people involved. It's a big studio, big franchise. There's a lot of people involved from 20th Century Fox, from Disney. Ridley Scott is involved. So I'm sure he did his best, but I just feel the film is not scary enough. I feel that I'm missing more scares and more darkness and more jump scares. That was my hope for the film, to have at least as much scary moments as the first film has, because the first film is truly scary, and it's really, it's a masterpiece, and it's really remarkable. So I thought the film was okay. There's some plot holes as well. We can go into that in a second once I hear what you think. I do feel that the plot holes are something that I can't really pass through. I've watched the film 3 times now, because I watched it in the cinema at the time, and then I watched it a second time just to make some notes for the podcast, and now I just recently watched it again on the visual effects screeners, and so I've seen the film many times, and I think the more I watch it, the kind of like the magic goes away. I'm starting to see more plot holes. I'm starting to see a few more problems. I'm not as scared, of course. I don't know. I feel like the film could have been maybe a bit tighter as well. Again, I don't want to sound disrespectful. The director is a really great director. I'm a really big fan of him. But I just feel that it could have been a bit shorter, could have been more condensed. I think it's overstays its welcome a little bit, and it's just not scary enough. That's my view,
Yeah, look, I agree with you about the not scary enough. And I'm just, of course, like #1 fan for Alien and Aliens. And I've enjoyed all the Alien films. Prometheus and Covenant, the recent ones, have their own watchability to them.
Even Covenant has great stuff.
Prometheus is scary to some degree, but is almost like just a normal sci-fi film, and Covenant just isn't scary enough. But Alien Romulus, I've seen it twice, and it's one of those films, Hugo, where I actually think I enjoyed it better the second time. Okay. And part of that is the film is so beautiful. The film is really, really beautiful to look at and watch as a film-going experience. We often talk about that at the VFX Notes podcast. Did we enjoy it in the moment, in the cinema? And I absolutely did. Like you, I was probably waiting for crazy more jump scares, especially because it was pitched as a horror film, has a great trailer, where they didn't give away too much, and they try not to, I think, with these. The trailer is fantastic.
Yeah, the trailer. It's good that you mentioned it. It's been a while since I've seen such a good trailer. Usually trailers are not very good. They give away too much, and they're just not very well made these days.
Yeah. In the end, I just think this is such a beautiful film, totally watchable. I'm there for the creatures and the great visual effects work. In the end, I probably think there's almost too many creatures, which I would never usually say for a big film like this. And this is a spoiler, but there's an Offspring creature, and it's fantastically done. And I think I like where he goes with the Offspring, but in the end, it kind of feels a little bit added on. I think they had their adversaries. But as I say, I enjoyed it as a film. It's just so gorgeous to look at.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add to your acclamation for Fede. He is a filmmaker I really kind of started following after Don't Breathe. I missed Evil Dead originally.
Yeah.
And then more recently, I've been watching his old stuff that he posted, at least this 2009 short. The English language title is Panic Attack. I don't know if you've seen that, Hugo, but it is basically evidence that Fede wanted to be a filmmaker from the very beginning. And actually, we'll tell this story, but he was at View Conference last year and recounted that whole experience making Panic Attack. But we'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, as a film, Hugo, it's beautiful. It definitely fits in the Alien universe because it's literally slotted in there, between 1 and 2. And I just, if you watched Alien, then watched Romulus, then watched Aliens, I'm not sure you'd get the same vibe, even though that's kind of what they were trying to do, sort of.
Yeah, right? I know what you mean. It's funny, isn't it? It's almost like Rogue One going in between the two trilogies, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I have to hand it over. Like for me, Alien 1 is very special, and especially because of Giger's work. And I'm so happy that he got an Oscar for it. It was also tremendous to see like a painter and an artist getting an Oscar as well at the time. Aliens 2, of course, is one of the best action movies ever made. It's not a horror movie at all. It's just like a pure action movie. Aliens 3 is really
scary.
dark.
Aliens is scary.
It is, yeah, it is scary.
Yeah.
I feel like this film, for me, it's like maybe on the middle of the list. I mean, I have my favorites. I have also the ones that I like the least. What I'm more excited about this, and you've talked about that, I think Fede is really talented, especially the work that he's done in horror. I am really excited about what he's going to do next, because he's going to do another one. At least that's what it looks like. He's going to do another Alien. And I think that's great, because now he has the backing of the studio. They know who he is. It was a success. The film did really well, both critical and financially as well. And I think now he's going to have more strength on him to do probably what he wants, and maybe he'll have a bit more freedom. Maybe he can try. He's already mentioned this on the quote. He's already been quoted online saying that people are going to flip their mind when they see the new one. So I'm really hopeful that this was the beginning and he can make an outstanding horror movie next. I'm really looking forward for that, because I think now everyone is going to give him the confidence, because I'm sure it was risky, because the film is relatively low budget, especially for an Alien movie. It was only 80 million, which is incredible if you think about what's on screen. They did amazingly well with the money they had. But now I think 20th Century Fox, I think they're going to give him a bigger check, and I think it's going to maybe potentially have more risks as well on the film, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually quite an interesting production history of this film, which actually I think goes into how well it appears on screen.
Yeah.
I believe, after Fede had made this short called Panic Attack, he got the attention of some Hollywood studios, including Ghost Horse Pictures, and that's how he got Evil Dead. And even back then, he was thinking, I want to write an Alien film. And he wrote one. And we won't need to go into all the details, but he, eventually got greenlit to make Romulus. But as I understand it, it was meant to be a Hulu release, right? A streaming release, because these streamers were trying to get more content on their platform so that people subscribe to them. We've heard about these films, and Prey was one of them that really only got a streaming release and was fantastic on Hulu. It was on Hulu too. But I think they greenlit it for a film before shooting began. But perhaps the smaller budget meant that, you often hear filmmakers say sometimes they don't mind being restricted by a smaller budget because they get to do bigger things in terms of make bigger leaps and sort of, keep it in the dark, keep it in shadow, that sort of thing. I think it worked here for Romulus. maybe it was even less of a budget, and possibly they doubled it for the film or something like that. In many ways, the smaller budget can be felt on screen, but I actually think it works for this film.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting side to how this film came to be, and I think it ended up making for a better film than if we had launched into another Prometheus Covenant type film, right?
Yeah, huge $200 million film. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Where there's more stress on it to do well. That's the other part.
And also
of it, right?
like bigger names involved as well. I think that also helped the film as well. There's quite a lot of really interesting things happening here on the film, both the director being quite fresh and new, and also the DOP as well, Galo Olivares. I mean, he's a relatively newcomer to film, especially to big budget movies. He himself admits that, and really recommend people listening to the several interviews he has for the American cinematographer. There's an audio interview, there's a video interview as well, and there's some written interviews as well. He's fantastic on those interviews, and he tells about the story, how he got to film this film and how he became the DOP of this film and what he used and what he did and the choices he made. We're going to talk about that in a second, but I think definitely, yes, the budget, but the budget also, yes, you're right, you see it. It's a bit like The Matrix. You see that the budget was limited, but the film is amazing. So it's like the film looks great, and they did, every dollar that they spend is on the screen. You can feel that. The feels the film is so beautiful, but also like the downside of that, and I think that's also one of the problems I have with the film, is that the film, like I said, is for my taste, is a bit slow, and it's a bit too long, and it's not scary enough. And I also think there's a few plot holes on the film, which I can't really solve. And I'm a bit.
Name one. Let's see. Let's go.
Okay, this is a simple one. Maybe you know why, but why did they take the cargo? I mean, they said they were going to leave the planet, and they take this cargo attached to the ship, which becomes a plot hole, becomes a plot problem later, because she has to release the cargo to kill the creature. Why did they take the cargo in the first place? It would have been cheaper to not take the cargo. They didn't need so much fuel. It would have been lighter, the ship, to go with the cargo. Okay, do you know why? Okay, I don't know. Do you know?
I don't know why.
Because plot needed it to be.
Yeah, and that's tied up possibly in, well, we're stealing a ship, and we don't want to like cause any attention, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what's kind of stranger about that, Hugo, don't you think, is they go to this known space station.
Oh, that's my other plot line.
Clearly, Weyland knows is problematic, and no one's monitoring it. They're not being monitored. But there's a slightly odd thing about how they're going to use the fuel and stuff to go high, to travel longer distances. Look, I get it. Some of that is very working out the machinations of getting away in space travel.
I know.
I have seen it twice, and I did still wonder how that all worked.
That's my second point. Like, why? What, they never called they never called the space station? They never emailed them? Like, they didn't know that it was there? It's just abandoned. They just left it there with probably the most important research they've ever done to life,
Well,
it's a bit weird.
You could argue that that's very deliberate, because they want more people to go to this Weyland-Yutani space station and, be experimented on. Like, you could...
I guess.
You think it's all
dire,
isn't it? Right? I see. They don't care about the people on the planet. They never actually want them to leave, right? That's a plot point.
Yeah, I see. Another thing, the last one I will say is the black goo thing. The black goo thing, which was introduced on Prometheus. So there's a moment on the film that she does not want to inject her friend with the black goo because she doesn't trust the black goo. Like, Andy says, use this. And she said, no, we don't know what that is. Let's not do it. Okay. And they don't do it. And then she has the choice of just leaving the goo there. But no, she takes the goo with her to the elevator. And then the goo somehow is available for her to inject herself once she's alone. Why didn't they leave the goo behind, since they didn't trust it and she didn't want the goo to be there? Why is it there? I know why, because they had to have the third act on the film. But like you see, like why is it still? I don't know. There's a moment on the film that she's running to the aliens are coming. They're all gonna die, and Andy is broken on the corner, like having a fit. And then they're about to run to the elevator, and she picks up the goo and takes it with her. Why? Why did she do that? Like, I couldn't not unsee this the third time I watched the movie. I only noticed it the third time. I mean, if I ever meet Fede, I will ask him.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm going to segue from... I don't have an answer. I mean, I don't know. I will use that as a segue into discussing Fede and the way he has engaged with the community on this film. I really love it. He's on Instagram and Twitter and has genuinely been answering fans' questions in really honest ways. Yeah, we'll talk about one particular thing about Rook later on. And I just think that is awesome. There's a couple of filmmakers out there who are on social media and do that. And then others that, you know, they know it can be problematic and they can probably get into a whirlwind of hate online. I just love that Fede's doing that. And again, we got to meet him at View Conference and he was exactly the same. He's super honest and open about it. Gosh, in some interviews I listened to, he was like really honest and open about how he felt about Ridley Scott's films, Prometheus and Covenant. And I guess it might be the Uruguayan, you know, he's from Uruguay. There might be something about his personality and culture that lets him be that honest and open. Hence, he's also a great filmmaker because he expresses himself in ways that not everyone does. And I just generally, Hugo, I've kind of loved that about the film, the discourse about it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I, so no disrespect to the director. I love him as well. I love his films. And I was just joking around. I mean, these plot holes, every film has plot holes, every film. And I think it's more of a joke that I'm just making, like these, all horror movies have things that happen because they have to happen for the film to move forward. And I have no problems with that. Like and I don't want to be disrespectful because I know how hard I've done very small productions and I know how hard they were to make. And I can't even imagine how hard it is to make something like this. So I don't want to sound like a dick saying these things. I'm just joking around.
On Twitter, I'm sure I posted some sort of photo that had the alien acid and how people who'd seen the film knew that they put the zero gravity back on so that the acid wouldn't go through the ship and cause some sort of implosion. Well, like, it still floats around and could easily touch the edge of the ship. Like, it was a character in the moment type decision. But
Stop it, Ian.
It's the coolest sequence in the film, by the way. So let's just remember, sometimes you just want things to look cool. And I love that sequence.
Absolutely. Like but you're right. Like, he's been amazing, and I'm so happy to see directors, joining the community like this. It's been great. I also, sorry, you were going to say, go for it.
I only want to just give a shout out to the acting troupe on this film, in particular Kaylee Spaney, who I really love in Civil War as well. And I think, she's one of these go-to actors now in Hollywood for a certain
Oh, man, have
you
seen Priscilla already?
I haven't seen Priscilla, and I really want to.
It's amazing. It's an amazing film. Sofia Coppola, again, strikes again with an amazing, mind-blowing film, and she's amazing on it. I think she's definitely on fire right now, and she's been doing a lot of really great films. And she's really young as well, so she's only 24,
Exactly. And all of them, by generally choosing slightly unknown actors, it does make for a more interesting film where no particular actor is stealing the spotlight. Yeah.
But she has a great agent. Jesus, she's been picking them really well lately, if you think about it. I also wanted to shout out David Johnson as the android as well. He's amazing as well, playing Andy.
Fantastic.
He's just been nominated for a BAFTA for newcomer. So there's a special BAFTA in the BAFTA Awards, which is for first performance, first ever performance on a film, and he's been nominated. I hope he wins that award. He steals the show even more than anyone else. I think he's really good on the film.
Yeah.
I think he steals the show. He's so good on these double character that he has on the film.
I think Hugo, in addition to great direction and clearly great acting in the film, this is a film for crafts, right? With cinematography, incredible. Production design and the art department and all the concept work that would have gone into this film, incredible. Sound design, I love seeing this on the big screen in a dark room. They did an awesome job with sound. So those sorts of things stand out to me as just all humming and working together and fitting in, as we keep saying, with that probably smaller budget. Cinematography-wise, there's just exactly the right kind of keep it in the shadows, keep it in the dark, have that yellow light mean something, didn't you feel, that Galo had done? And I guess I'd love to hear your more thoughts on cinematography, Hugo. I feel like you have usually a better perspective on that than me.
Yeah, I think Galo did an amazing job. Like I've never heard of his work until now. He's really talented newcomer for motion pictures. He's done a lot of music videos, a lot of short films. He's also never worked with Fede before. He was the DOP of Gretel and Hansel, and he was the camera operator of Rome, the movie that won so many Oscars years ago. And so he's experienced, but he hasn't been really doing a lot of big... As he says on his interviews, I've never done anything like this. And it's really funny how they met, because they of course, they never worked together, but they had a Zoom call, as he explains on the American Cinematography interview. And, they spoke Spanish because it was both of them the native language that they have. And they got really well together. But then Fede said, well, I'm never going to convince the studio to hire you because I just met you on Zoom. We need to meet in person. And so they have this really great story where he came and hang out with Fede in LA, and they had this barbecue, and they drank a bunch of mezcal, and they were a bit drunk and everything, and they didn't even talk about the film, and then just talked about movies and talked about stuff, and then they became kind of buddies, and then at the end, Fede's like, I'm gonna hire you to do the film. So it's a really funny and really heartfelt story on that side, but I think he brings a really great clarity to the film. Often on these films, there's a lot of conversation about using anamorphic or using old lenses or using something that will dirten the image or have chromatic aberration or have the edges really broken. Galo really never did that. He brought in everything's clinically clean. He didn't want to give any interruption to what he was filming, so he filmed it with an Alexa 35, so a smaller format and a smaller sensor, so everything would become a bit more intimate. Used only ADI Master Primes, which are really renowned for sharpness and very clean image, almost no vignetting, almost no chromatic aberration. And you can feel that on the film. The film, because there's nothing in the image that is, interrupting the image like we usually have with these old lenses, it just becomes a very modern look. It becomes very slick. I think that would be it. And also the lighting of the film, they try to, as he explains, they try to avoid the common LED lighting. They use a lot of sodium lights. They use a lot of older, warmer lights to try to get this kind of lighting that it has a connection to Alien 1 and a connection with Alien 2, so that you would feel that the film belongs between. And those films already had different languages anyway, because Aliens 1 is anamorphic and then Aliens 2 is spherical. So they were already different anyway. So he thought, okay, let's just make something different in the middle as well. It's not going to be a problem. And I have to say this because I'm a huge gamer, as you know. I usually play a lot of games, as everyone on the audience knows. I'm a huge nerd for games. And I was so happy to hear that they've used one of the best horror games ever made as an influence, because Fede loves the game and Galo also loves it. There's an Alien film, which is from a British studio, from the Creative Assembly, which is already 10 years old. It's a game called Alien Isolation. In this game, it is the best Aliens game ever made. It's scary as hell. Like, you cannot play this game without having goosebumps the whole time, because it's just you on a spaceship, an abandoned spaceship, and there's one alien lurking around, and you never know where he is, and you can't kill him. He kills you if he finds you. And the game is just one of the scariest experiences I've ever had in my life. And that game is very faithful to the first film, incredibly faithful. It has a lot of really... And there's a lot of nods on this film from that game. They both love the game, and they talk about that on the interviews. And they took a lot from that game, including there are certain props from the game that appears on the film. There are certain camera angles that appear from the film that were taken from the game as well. And so there's a lot of inspiration, not only from... Because I would say that most people that play games would say that this game, Alien Isolation, is probably the best Alien movie as well. It's one of the best Alien movies that came out from the last 20 years after Aliens 1 and Aliens 2 came out. So it's almost like a movie in itself. So it's great that they are bringing a lot of different things to this film. You know, they are using different types of lenses, they're using different types of cameras, different types of lighting, using inspiration from games, and it just feels fresh. And I think that's why it looks so beautiful and it looks so great, the film. You know, and I think it's a testament to the creativity and to the really a different approach that they gave to this film. And also I think it's also peculiar that they shot it chronologically as well, which is also really interesting, which is very rare that something is filmed chronologically. It's very rare. They made the decision to film the film in order as the film is progressing. So I think there is just like, the film just... I'm very sad that it wasn't nominated for the cinematography award in the Oscars. I think it should have been nominated. There's some incredible shots on this movie. I just feel that it's like sometimes you become really on awe on when you're looking at the film at the screen. You know, I do
think there's some incredible looking shots, but it also feels run and gun, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about run and gun with people like Gareth Edwards, and even Wes Ball and some of these younger filmmakers. Yeah. Partly, I think there's a clear lineage from their experience having to make indie films.
Yeah.
Now, Fede had this benefit in some ways of making that short film called Panic Attack, and then it going viral on YouTube, in an era where Hollywood studios really wanted to, grab new filmmakers and see what they might do. But he basically made Panic Attack for like $300 and did the work, did the visual effects himself with some aid. And it took him, I think, something like 3 or 4 years, possibly longer, right?
To make it.
When you go and watch that film, everybody, you will see some very ordinary visual effects work done, right? Because he was using his home computer, and I can only imagine what he was doing in 3D Studio, I can't remember exactly what tools he was using, but it doesn't matter. There's the shades of a great filmmaker there in this short film. It's very compelling, very watchable, and that's why, he got this attention. But I feel when he went and got to make these bigger films, Evil Dead and Don't Breathe, he kept that kind of style in there. And it's also in Alien Romulus, which actually brings up something else, Hugo, that I feel like we should talk about before we even dive into the effects work, which is, this is one of those films that could easily and sometimes stray into we made it all practically, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't do any visual effects work. Now, at the View conference, Fede kind of acknowledged that and kind of talked about it in this great session that he had there in Turin, where he said, well, it just isn't true, because he thought he was going to be a visual effects guy, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what he thought his path might be in filmmaking. And it was only really because of things like Evil Dead and Don't Breathe that didn't necessarily have huge budgets that he had to solve some things without visual effects. Now, there actually are plenty of visual effects in Evil Dead and Don't Breathe.
They've been nominated for the visual effects side and everything, and compositing, and there's a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah,
but I just think it in this case, sometimes when we're talking about a Barbie or an Oppenheimer or whatever, sometimes it ends up being the filmmaker who often gets themselves in a bind by saying we shot it all practically. As we know, sometimes it's the way films are marketed where that happens. In this particular case, I don't feel like Fede pronounced that at all.
Yeah.
He was clearly super proud of the huge amount of practical effects work that was done, but also he is super proud of the digital visual effects work that's done. And when this film was being marketed and when it was being discussed, we actually just saw a lot of practical effects behind the scenes footage, and those people sort of put out in interviews to talk about the work. And we didn't hear much about the digital stuff. So it's the classic kind of let's not talk about CGI.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I'm really not pinning that on Fede at all.
No. It's not him at all. I don't think it's him at all. No, absolutely. I'm glad that you've brought this up, because I understand why people think that. Because if you watch, I've watched the whole Blu-ray, all the extras on the movie, and, it mentions briefly. I mean, Eric Barber is on the Blu-ray, which is a rare sight.
Eric Barber is the production visual effects supervisor.
Yeah, and he's on the Blu-ray, which is a rare sight these days. I think the last time I saw a VFX soup on a Blu-ray was Stefan Soretti. I think it's the last time I saw someone. So it's very rare these days that you even get to see them. So I'm happy that he's there, but I think it's also Eric. He's so famous. He's so huge on this industry. He's been on the VFX with all these David Fincher movies. He's been for such a long time. I don't think they would be able to ignore him. I don't think so. But he's such a big voice. But I don't think it's Fede at all. I also don't think. I am sure people are going to hate what I'm going to say, but I don't think anyone, even on the studio, pushed this. I don't think anyone pushed this. What happened was the third party outside people in Twitter, on social media, that pushed this thing, taking things out of context, taking articles out of footage as well. Like you said, it was flooded with footage of the facehuggers remotes, of the actual alien being done in a practical suit, which is all true. It's all done for real. The biggest problem that you have is that people that don't know anything about this industry, they watch those behind the scenes and they don't really check if the shot looks the same as the final. And that's the problem. And they probably not even notice it. They probably don't even notice. They see the hugger with the remotes on the hands and think, oh my God, look, that looks so good. But then on the movie, it's completely replaced in CG. And it was an excellent reference, and CG people loved that they had the reference there, and they could augment it or they could improve on it, but then they never really know that was CG. I don't think they get to understand. They don't understand that was CG. They still, until the end, think they saw a real prop, and I don't think the studio this time really pushed an agenda. They just unfortunately did what they always do. They don't mention much visual effects on their posts. They don't mention it on the Blu-rays. It's very rarely that is even mentioned it. There's only a really brief moment where Eric is on the Blu-ray. Hardly any breakdowns are there. There's just a few breakdowns here and there, which I was surprised to see. It's actually in there. But I just feel that, of course, the studio could have pushed more. They could have. I wish that we lived in a world where the studio would recognize this as just as any other crew of the film. They would recognize it like the production design. They recognize it as the props and recognize it as the puppeteers. They don't. Unfortunately, they do, because unfortunately, we've talked about this many times. People understand if there's one guy, one dude making a sculpture on an alien. They do not understand 100 people on ZBrush making that. They don't. People, it's too abstract. People don't know what that is. They don't. What is ZBrush? It starts already there. That's the problem. And this battle is us to be fighting it. I think the studio, I don't believe that they were disingenuous this time. I think it went out of proportion. I think the internet exploded by watching all these aliens, and then everyone just started saying, oh my god, it looks so much better than the Alien 3. And yeah, of course it does. Alien 3 is like from the 90s. Like, of course it looks better than Alien 3. I just find it so disingenuous, and it's just a bunch of people online that don't know anything about this. They don't know how films are made. They have no idea how these things are made at all. And it's unfortunately, they are the loudest and they're the noisiest. And then you get these hits with 1 million views, and it just goes out of proportion, and it becomes out of control. And that's the problem.
Yeah. And some of it's very explainable in this way. It is obvious that some behind-the-scenes footage at a practical creature makeup effects house, B-roll, is very watchable, right?
Of course,
you get artists working on these creatures, and gosh, they even use ZBrush to design their creatures. So there's a sort of strange crossover there. And, that's the footage the marketing teams have to show.
Yeah.
Right. That's what these featurettes and early, this is before the film's out, but also on the Blu-rays even. That's what they use. They don't necessarily have the budget or the time to go into visual effects studios anymore and film interviews, and maybe artists sitting on desktops and workstations isn't as sexy, when it's not as sexy as, creature work and prosthetics being made and makeup being applied and that sort of thing. But the problem is it does tend to make things lean towards, they shot that whole fight practically. And, we end up finding out that they totally did shoot it, but they replaced the stunt double, they did face replacement, they replaced the environment, the creature was just a stand-in. We know this, and we're okay with it. We don't like, or I personally don't like, when the runaway story becomes they've shot it all practically.
Yeah.
And whenever I hear that, I always go, yeah, they totally did shoot it all practically.
It's just so annoying, because I feel like we've lost control of this. We've lost control. This is getting worse, much, much, much worse. And I don't think it helps the filmmakers themselves. I don't even think none of them here are to blame. Both Fede and even the DOP, even Galo, the DOP, talks about the CG and the VFX. He talks about it on the interviews. They're not hiding anything. They're just saying it. The problem is that what they're doing, the interviews they're making, is being watched by very few people, and so it doesn't even have a lot of range. I mean, the Galo's interview for the American cinematographer is like hidden in a link in the page of the American, like you have to dig to find it. You can't even find it easily. And so it's never going to have it's never going to be watched by the mass audience. But I also think, but I do have some people to blame. I'm not saying that happened on this film. I wish that the marketing departments of these films would allow the studios to show more, because I feel I've seen, as a visual effects society member, as you are as well, we get to see a lot of breakdowns that are not public. And especially when you become a judge for the nominations, which we are as well, you get to see all the nominees, even the ones that don't get nominated. And man, I've seen 6 different breakdowns for this film. Completely different breakdowns for Rook, for the Xenomorph, for the Huggers, for the ships. None of them are public. Only the ship one is public. And a little bit of the Xenos, a little bit. Just a few shots. None of the thing from Rook is public. None of this, like all this stuff will never be watched by anyone. And this is a decision from the marketing department. They don't want to show it. I don't know why. Because it's cool. I don't even know why. Because it's so cool. Why don't they show it?
I mean, again, we've talked about this before. And
I know.
The number one reason they don't want to show it is because they want the conversation to be about the film and not about what got replaced, right?
Sure.
Let's forget that seems to disrespect some visual effects artists, because their contributions are equally as good as the practical effects artists. That's probably the number one reason. Often, Hugo, the second biggest reason is plot spoilers. We all know that some big scenes, and often the third act battle, is the big visual effects sequence. And these breakdowns often show the third act battle or a big scene monster fight, right? And I think by the time the film's been out for a while and then award season comes, people have seen the film. It's not so much of a plot spoiler. But early on, they don't want to reveal that sort of stuff. And that's where I give them a leave pass, right?
You're being too nice. You're being too nice.
Well, okay, as a VFX journalist, occasionally I do post a GIF or something or a headline discussing how the visual effects of a film get made. And Hugo, the amount of times people reply, "Oh, thanks, I would have liked to have watched that first," or "Thanks for the
No, I get it.
So
I get it.
I'm not saying
that's fine.
I want the studios to pull back on showing stuff at all.
Yeah.
But as that happens more often to me, I kind of get it a little bit more every day.
I get it as well.
More.
I get it. That's fine. I'll give him that. But okay, what about the Visual Effects Society breakdowns that never came to public from 5 years ago? They're still not public. What's happening there? Like, why can't I see the Tenet breakdown? It's out, the film. Everyone knows what it is. Why the fuck can't I see it? Like, where is it? Like, where is the breakdowns of Top Gun? Top Gun has been out for ages. A lot of breakdowns are only public on the Visual Effects Society website. Weren't they public? I mean, the film has been out for 4 years. For God's sake, we can publish it now. Why aren't they not out? I mean, that's my problem. I'm assuming that this will never come out. I'm assuming because that's what happens. It never comes out. And when it comes out little butchered. There's a few things of the Xenomorph with, of course, half of the time of the video is about the sculpting of the Xenomorph, and then there's like 2 seconds of the CG at the end. It's very disproportionate. The same with Rook. There's an entire featurette about Rook online on YouTube, actually public online for everyone to watch. Very, very, very edited. It doesn't even show, not even 10% of what we saw in the Visual Effects Society's breakdown. Right. So my feeling is that it's not because of the plot, because otherwise they wouldn't even shown the one that they're showing with the physical puppet, because the one you're talking about, the monster at the end, yes, that doesn't exist. There's not, but I didn't even saw a breakdown. Even the Visual Effects Society don't have one because it never was nominated for. It wasn't a plot. I don't think it was submitted. That section was submitted because I didn't see it. So I'm just talking about. I'm talking about them only showing bits and pieces, and then I'm more upset about years after it still is not out. I just don't know why. Even if it's why is it not out? Does someone need to leak this stuff? I don't really understand it. Why is it not out?
Don't leak it, anybody, because you'll never be able to see them then. But I mean, Hugo. It is the kind of film that really does bring up that practical digital weirdness, and that's why we're talking about it. I'm not defending the studios at all in this, but it is part of their job to work out the right conversation about the film. Absolutely. And can we say they nailed it?
Yeah, absolutely.
They were like,
they got a nomination. They've managed.
No, Hugo, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about promoting the film when the film came out. Not to do with the Visual Effects Society Awards. I'm talking about people went to see this film because they liked what they saw in the trailer. They thought it was scary, but they also were really quite positive about the use of practical effects.
Yeah.
Right? That was a thing. It was absolutely a thing.
Yeah.
Now, I like to think that then they went and saw the film and enjoyed it. And if they thought maybe there were lots of digital visual effects, they went, oh, that's great digital visual effects work. But perhaps the common moviegoer was just enamored by the use of practical effects here. And whatever we say, Hugo, about the weirdness of talking about practical versus digital, there is something out there. There totally is something out there in the movie-going public where they seem to want films to have more practical effects.
I know.
What
but
you
this...
and I hate, or me in particular, is the misinformation, the disinformation about how certain particular shots have been accomplished in these films. It's my personal mission, as I've probably said, to just talk about how a film was made or a shot was made. Yeah. I don't care if it was practical or digital or if it got completely replaced. The mission of the marketing team is to get bums on seats. And, you know, I think in a conference room, boardroom discussion about how to market this film, they went, let's make sure they know the Xenos are practical, right?
Yep. Even if they're not, that's fine. It's fine. I understand that, and every time I talk with people that are outside from this industry, if I meet people in the street or if I meet people on shops or on video shops or at CX or certain places that I meet people, I always hear the same thing. Oh my God, Alien Romulus was so amazing because they did it all for real. I keep hearing the same conversation. Even very, very famous reviewers of films. You know, I can give you an example. Like here in the UK, there's a very famous reviewer called Mark Carbot. He's a very famous reviewer from the BBC, used to be from the BBC. Now he has his own podcast, and he reviews films for a living. He's probably the most famous movie reviewer of the UK. He's met all the big directors. He's a big fella here. And even him, like he was reviewing the film, I listened to his review. Even him in the middle of the review, I'm so happy that they finally understood that they have to do it practical for it to look good. They say these things. These people, everyone says this thing. And I'm listening to this thing. Yes, I'm so glad that they've decided that now that it's practical, it's a better movie. It's like this narrative is damaging and it's a problem. And I'm not 100% sure where it started and where it started. I mean, Jonas has done that, all those videos. He's trying to connect the dots. Vasari is also trying to connect the dots. It started somewhere, but it worked. It worked. If the most famous movie reviewer of the UK says this so lightly, that, you know, oh, I'm so glad that they finally understood that it had to be practical for it to look good. And he doesn't even know, and he should know because he's a person he's granted access to everything. He has he interviews the directors, he interviews the productions. He has books about movies. He should know these things, but not even him knows or cares. This is a problem. This is a problem, and I just feel that this film is just like Top Gun. There will never be anyone that will ever not think that it was all for real. It's over. It's gone. Because as soon as you saw all those suits, it's gone. It's done. It's done. Now it's all real. The whole thing. Even if it's not. And we know, props to everyone involved. The suits look amazing. And some shots are real. And some shots are not. And some shots are mixed. We all know that. I'm not saying it's all VFX. It's not. Like, there's a lot of practical stuff on this film. And a lot of mixture of practical and a lot of replacement as well. A lot of stuff that worked in practical. Some stuff worked only in digital. I'm not saying that. Fede didn't say that. The behind the scenes don't say that. No one is lying anywhere. But this seed is done. Like people just think it is. And there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. Well,
and because we can't show it, because we can't show the breakdowns, because I can't share them. And this episode will come out without the breakdowns because they don't exist. There are only a few of them. Again, no one will see it again. So it's like, you know, it's a problem. I find it a problem.
Yeah. Look, there's a couple of champions out there. You're one of them. Jonas Using and Todd Vasari are great at talking about, okay, this film was made this certain way and people have got the wrong idea about how visual effects were used here. Yeah. Here's what, they won't necessarily say, here's what happened, because they don't always know. We don't always know
Yeah.
the intricacies of it. I would say you mentioned film reviewers. We've had this conversation before, but I do sometimes blame them as the first wave of getting the discourse wrong. And even then, you can't blame the reviewers. Sometimes the film studio puts out production notes, which are problematic if they're written, almost before the film is finished, because they're often written or they're written to sort of match what was filmed. And in this case, with Romulus, so much was filmed with practical creatures.
Yeah. The B-roll is amazing.
That's what you get interviews on in terms of those creature effects designers and makers. And you don't, there's a whole post-production period where you don't always include discussion with the visual effects teams. And that's probably what happened a little bit with the reviews of Romulus. The production notes absolutely are heavy on the creature effects work, right? Practical creature effects work. So what I'm trying to do, Hugo, is paint a picture of why this kind of happens. And we all know that generally audiences right now, for whatever reason, are, as I say, enamored by practical effects.
Yeah.
It's no big surprise that the film studios would market it that way.
Of course,
we're not stupid.
Of course, of course not. Of course, I understand that, and I don't think this was solvable by us, and it's going to take many, many years. I just, we will continue to do this battle and try to show as much as we can, but it's not ever going to be easy. And in this situation, it's not even that hidden. Like there's the thing with the face huggers, that they were all real and all remote and this and that. Like there's actually public breakdowns of them in CG, and you see that they are CG. You actually see the wipe, and you see the room is empty, and then the room is filled with huggers in CG. And so even that, this time is not even hidden. It's actually there. It's not like Top Gun, which was really hidden. Like I feel like this time it becomes even worse. I think people are not even checking. I feel like people just believe that it's like that, and that's it. Like they don't even go and check, or even go and check really for real if it was really or not. And I don't know, like this. I don't want to sound like a broken record. One thing I must say, and I really want to give props to the entire production design team and concept art team and the director and the DOP. And by watching the B-roll, which I'm playing right now, if you guys want to see, if you're watching this in video, I think this production design is outstanding. Like the props and the sets look absolutely mind-blowing. And
agree.
It was all shot in Budapest, and they actually did the ships. They did the corridors. They did it. It becomes amazing what they've achieved. They really build it. Yeah, they really build those places. They are
a really good point, and really the thing that we would prefer to be talking about.
Yeah,
which is the benefit of having sets, the benefit of having real practical Xenomorphs, facehuggers, and the Offspring on set is when you do have to augment them with visual effects, digital visual effects, or replace it with CG and everything in between. You have the world's most amazing lighting reference and movement reference and whatever.
Absolutely.
And in fact, the reality is that's what the filmmakers know is working now, and the visual effects supervisors.
It's how we do VFX
Shoot something, and you'll get a better result, right?
It's always been like this, always. From the very beginning, it's always been like this.
And maybe the problem is we sometimes talk about it being one or the other. Not you and me talk about it, but people talk about it being one or the other. And these days, great filmmakers, great visual effects supervisors, it's not one or the other. Right?
Yeah.
It's like the combo. It's both.
And that's where that's why I started this conversation. Apologies for the rant. I don't really want to be a rant person, but I started this conversation with saying, these people that are disseminating this information, they don't really know how films are made. They are not filmmakers, and that's why this is a problem. Because all filmmakers know that all departments are important. They are all working together. Guys, I can guarantee you all that there is no fighting between the digital and the practical and the physical and the VFX. There's no fight on set, and there's no fight on the production of someone trying to steal the spotlight or this or that. I've been on enough sets on my life in working in the industry and for 20-something years now. Everyone is working together. Everyone is helping each other. The person on the gaffer on the team of lighting, they help the VFX guys, and the VFX guys help the production design, and then the production design helps the DOP. They're all helping each other, and that's why it's amazing. Filmmaking is an amazing art, and it's an amazing collaboration. They are all respecting each other. They all love each other, and they're all... When they're in that boat making the film, no one is fighting. This fight and this one thing or the other, one thing is better, the other is better. This is all conversation created by people that have never made a movie in their lives, and they don't know how films are made. They have no idea how films are made, because if they did, they wouldn't say this. That's the thing. Like right. It's as simple as that.
Okay. I think it's time for us to actually talk about some of this creature effects work and digital visual effects work.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a plug, Hugo, and that is Befores and Afters magazine, which has a full issue on Alien Romulus. And to be frank, to follow up on our discussion of practical versus digital, it's heavily on the practical. Now, that's who Disney made available to talk to. Thanks, Hugo.
I can put I can put my mouth here.
But I was very lucky to talk to Eric Barber. Okay, yeah. We've got that. And he's the visual effects supervisor. And so there's a significant contribution in there about the digital visual effects work. But look, one of the first things I talk about in the magazine are the Xenomorphs. Yeah. Hugo, and clearly they're seen in other Alien films. This time around, made by Legacy Effects, as overseen by creature effects designer Shane Mahan. And they're digital by ILM and digital by WetaFX as well. So let's say that up front. Incredible craftsmanship from Legacy Effects. For about there's 2 or 3 variants of Xenomorphs in the film. And Legacy Effects made puppets, suits, bunraku puppet kind of thing, insert pieces, all with their incredible fabrication techniques. And you can see them in the film. There are plenty of final shots with practical Xenomorphs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can see the goo coming out of their mouths. You can see certain things they made to change the helmet area. I don't know the skull area, I suppose. Yeah. To make it slightly different than other films. Hugo, what was your reaction to the Xenos in this film?
Well, the first thing I have to say is that I just wanted to say, Ian, that this is really cool that you're now doing these magazines with one film at a time. I love this new format that you've made. This is an astonishing issue. I think it's by far the most complete thing about this film that ever existed, because I don't believe there's an art book, and even if there will be an art book, it will just be concept art probably.
I wish there was an art book. Yeah,
I don't think there was one. But even if it is, it won't have any VFX. It will just be concept art. But this, guys, go and buy Before and Afters number 22. It's a really good magazine. It's available on Amazon's, and it's really... Congratulations, Ian. This is great. I really loved this magazine. I read it all cover to cover. What can I say? The Xenomorphs, they just look amazing. Like I could not believe my favorite thing of all these behind the scenes, all these breakdowns that I saw is this pump that they've made. They did a little pump so that the goo keeps going.
Yeah.
It does never stop. I just found it so fascinating, the amount of detail that they went to make these creatures look so realistic on screen, because as probably a lot of people know from the original film, it's just a dude on a suit. really. And it was a suit that if it would last very long on screen, you probably would notice that it's a suit, and that's probably why it's so short. Yeah. It's probably that's why it's so short on the film. There's like 10 frames here, 15 frames there. But they went all in. And of course, now things are different from 79. You know, like we have much better fabrication now. We have 3D printing. We can have all these remote gadgets. We have electronics. They can actually model things on ZBrush and then print them. It is so much easier now to make this. I'm not saying this is easy. This is not easy at all. But I just feel that they nailed it. And this must have been a godsend for the CG team, because they had a practical object that they could have on set, on some shots even used for real, and not only the rubber and the gooey, but even the transparent looseness of the head with the liquids. The whole thing is like the perfect lighting reference and the perfect starting point for all the other shots that they had to do, which is really amazing. And I have to give props to Galo and to Fede to at least give it a go to try to film all of it practically, because that's the correct approach. You try to go for it. I'm trying to go for it, try to do the whole thing for real as much as we can. And when we fail, then we bring in big guns and we bring in all the CG and all the VFX to try to fix things. Yeah. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think you said fail there, but again, Hugo, you don't
not
mean
fail.
it like that.
No, I didn't mean that like that. What I mean is like if it doesn't look as good as they wanted it to look. That's what I mean. Like sometimes they might have thought, it would have been so much cooler if it would move a bit, or if it would have a pulse, or if it would have liquids coming through, and you can't really do that on a prop. Or sometimes maybe even the movement is a bit stiff here or there, or it could be that there are certain little things that maybe would pull you out of the action, and that is where this really works really well, because then they can bring in CG and VFX and really fix it, you know, and kind of bring it even better.
Yeah, and just remember, there are some shots that are designed that can't be achieved with the practical Xenomorphs, right?
Of course. Yeah.
0G, like we're talking, would you like have them all up in wires with bits missing from being shot up with the pulse
puppeteers,
rifle?
You would put a bunch of puppeteers also flying through the air.
Yeah, or you know, remember these are sets for a spaceship, like a space station, and they're basically big creatures, so you can't always fit them in the corners and cornices of these sets. So I think people have to remember, it's not, and I know you didn't mean it like this, Hugo, it's not that they fail to do it practically. No, I didn't mean it. No. It's that many of the digital visual effects shots for Xenos are designed as digital visual effects shots. Yeah. Because that's how you're going to be able to stage the action that you need for a particular scene. And those two examples are just some that I think the filmmakers have talked about.
Yeah.
What also happens is that during the edit, during filming, they couldn't move the creature fast enough. It isn't considered scary enough. It reflects the wrong light for whatever reason, right? Yeah. And so why not use the digital visual effects tools that are there to deal with the lighting, to add more goo? I mean, there are some times where the Xenos have some sort of electrical spark in their head. Yeah. Now, that is just a thing more easily achieved with computer graphics and digital visual effects, right? There's a scene we'll talk about later, which is the Chestburster, which actually does change color. Now, they did do that practically because they were able to work out a way to do it. But there are other things that happen with the creatures that it's just easier and more efficient, and also sometimes only achievable with digital visual effects.
Yes.
That's often what we want the conversation to be. You're doing things because you can do it better in CG, right? Yeah. And I think that's really the proportion of Xeno shots here are where it was just done better with CG.
Yes. Didn't mean to say that, what I said, but I do have to say, though, that the reason why I said this is because I've, of course, watched the breakdowns that came for the Visual Effects Society, which is not public. And the thing with that is that on a lot of shots, you actually see that they had the whole, especially the shots that, I give an example. There's this shot which is remnants of Aliens 3, when the Xenomorph is right next to the face of the main actress. Just before that shot, he's getting closer. And they have the whole suit there, the whole real Xenomorph on set is there. But then the arm of the Xenomorph is on the wrong place. And so they took out the arm that they shot there, and they put a new CG arm, and the tail is on the wrong place. And then they put the new tail. So, for example, on that specific shot, just the arm is CG and just the tail is CG. The rest of the Xenomorph is complete. And then, of course, the background is cleaned up because you see the puppeteers, you see the lighting, you see the rigs, you see like seat stands, you see a bunch of stuff. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm sure they tried to make it as practical as possible, but then at some point they thought, that arm didn't work, or it didn't really feel as it should, or it's hanging, or it's wrong, or it's on the wrong place. And so that's why I say the word fix it, because then they fixed what they couldn't do on set. And there's a couple of shots like that where they only have sections of the Xenomorph which is replaced. And of course there's full CG Xenomorphs as well. And there's also like some shots that, if you look at the behind the scenes that is public, you think it's all real. Give an example, when the Xenomorph appears from, when the elevator drops and they all died, all the Xenomorphs, and there's one single Xenomorph that still shows up on the corner to go and kill her. There's a lot of B-roll of this being a real Xenomorph on set, and I'm sure they filmed it. But the breakdowns that are available for the Visual Effects Society judges show a full CG Xenomorph. So something happened there. They might have chosen to go with the CG route instead. Maybe they didn't like what they shot on set. I don't know, because I never seen the shot that she shot. I only see the B-roll version of that shot. And so there's a couple, if you start reconstructing between the B-roll and the public breakdowns and then the private breakdowns, you start to construct a picture where some shots they made an attempt, they probably didn't like the result, and then they replaced it in CG. Other shots, they have parts of the shot that worked and others don't. So that's why I said the word fix, because it kind of felt to me that they didn't like what they shot on some shots. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Well, in any case, I feel like in particular ILM did a stellar job of matching the practical Xenos. I mean, they're complex creatures, right?
And that's why people think it's real, because it's so well matched that it looks real. Like, it's so well matched.
You know, they also have a particular kind of performance that is established in the earlier films. Also, this time by a suit performer, I think Trevor Newland. Sorry, Trevor, I've got your name wrong there. But, you know, there's a performance side of them as well. Then when they get more frenetic, you know, that's another tricky thing to pull off animation-wise. But I think ILM here just nailed it. And then add the acid and the goo and all that kind of effect simulation side of it and CFX side. You've got a really complex creature that ILM was able to pull off. So
when I saw the breakdowns, in the judging event, like, I was blown away, because it's just so well made, and it's so well lit, and it's so well composited. And the cleanup, and not just that, not even just the Xenomorph. This entire thing, the shaft, the horizontal shaft and the vertical shaft, which they filmed with wire work. They had an horizontal one, so they could lie the actors in horizontally and then pretend that they were falling. Then they had a 2-story vertical and an 8-story horizontally, and even just the sheer amount of just cleanup in painting and rotoscoping that happened to remove the wires and remove the rigging that they have attached to them for security, and then the puppeteers and all the C-stands going around everywhere. This entire thing is flawless, and I I have to hand it over to the VFX team by doing such an amazing job to enhance and make the physical and practical effects even better than they look. And I truly believe that this is why it was nominated for the VFX Oscar, because I'm sure the people voting saw the same breakdowns, and when they saw how much it was real and how much was enhanced and how much there was this combination, this is really what always either gets nominated or wins the Oscar. It's something that has both. It's always like that. It's always.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these shots just look absolutely amazing. Like this entire sequence is just flawless,
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to go from a creature that I think
one last thing that I just wanted to mention, which not a lot of people probably know, but there is even LED screens on these shots as well. There's a few shots where they shot the Xenomorph suit and the Xenomorph set with an LED screen as well. There's a couple of those shots on the film as well. So even that is even more impressive, because they've managed to merge the real ones, the practical one, the set, and then an LED shot on the middle of all of this. Especially these close-ups when you see the goo in the mouth, and those are LED on the back, an LED stage instead of like just a set. I don't know if it was because it's a pickup or if it was shot later. Maybe that was why, or maybe for budget reasons. But that's even more impressive, that you have this mixture of full CG, of set, and then LED stages, and you don't even notice. It's all kind of the same when you watch the whole film,
We're going to go now from a creature, and there's a bunch of different Xenomorphs, so just to make sure people realize that Legacy did a bunch of them, and as did the digital visual effects houses, to a visual effects character that is not as appreciated in the film, and that is Rook, who obviously takes the form of Ian Holm as an android, and the suggestion being that Weyland made a couple of different androids that look like Ian Holm. And so he appears as a damaged android on the space station. Now, how they made this first is that Legacy Effects was able to build an animatronic Rook using, photographs, clearly footage of Ian Holm from Alien, but also I think they were able to use a sculpt or a cast of Ian Holm from The Hobbit. Yeah, I don't think they had a cast from Alien or any films that Ian Holm had done around that time.
They didn't.
Now, it's a very ambitious thing to do an animatronic of a realistic of an android. It's meant to look like an android and a damaged one, but of a person actor we know so well. So at some point, the visual effects team and Fede felt like they could use CG, digital visual effects, and ultimately machine learning techniques to give this animatronic some movement. Either it was intended just to be in the eyes or in the mouth, and as I understand it, and was what Eric Barber told me, is they actually did some tests, and some early machine learning work for screenings. And then Metaphysic, which is, one of these hot visual effects machine learning companies that's worked on Robert Zemeckis' Here and George Miller's Furiosa, and also, of course, on Romulus. They use their techniques, which are machine learning techniques, and digital compositing to give Rook eye movement, facial movement, mouth movement that was more realistic, but maintained in that animatronic, he's an android look. The audience, I don't think they did like this, Hugo. And it's a sort of a response of, hey, he's a dead actor. Why are you bringing him back? Hey, you didn't quite nail it, right? It didn't necessarily look as convincing as it probably should. And then see, why is this character in the film at all, right? So there was sort of three things I don't feel like audiences loved about it. But what did you think, Hugo?
especially because there is another android which is still alive. Like, they could have used the actor that plays the android on Alien 3. He's still alive. So they could have used other people. I know what you mean. But, the family approved. It's all approved, and they were very happy to bring him back, and I liked that he was back. This was very ambitious, and I think, I don't want to disrespect anyone's work. I don't think it was completely accomplished. I don't think it was really, really perfect, to be honest. I think it's a bit uncanny valley, especially because I think, and they also think that, because they've now changed it, because they've now updated it for the streaming release, because the Blu-ray is different from the one on the streaming. It's not much better, but it's a bit better. I feel like this was always going to be controversial. As soon as you put deep fake and machine learning and AI on the sentence, this was always going to be... I think now, even if they would have done it in full CG, people would still think it's a deep fake. Like, the problem right now is that the audience is so against these kind of things that they are going to always react negative to it. I think it looks really good for the amount of time and the amount of budget and the amount of work that they put into this, because this was not a full CG approach. That was going to be too expensive, as they explained, to do it. And so they went to a more economical version to try to do it this way. I'm pretty sure that if it was maybe 10 years from now, it would have worked perfectly. Now we're still a little bit on the uncanny valley. But the technique itself is remarkable. And even before I go to the technique, I must say, watching the behind the scenes on the Visual Effects Society, and also the few behind the scenes that are on YouTube, I actually really like the puppet they've made. And I feel like I wish they just left the puppet. I know it would have been a puppet. I know people would complain. But he was damaged. He was all broken up. I would have believed it. I would have, maybe he's damaged and he's all kind of broken. I think they should have just left it as a puppet the whole
challenge
time.
is that Ian Holm plays it in the first film as a human, and even when he gets his head lopped off,
yes,
and is sticking up through a table with the milky stuff around him, it's not played as a damaged android. It's played as it is, but it's a human, like it's him. And I just think if they kept it as animatronic only, any comparison made with the first film would show that it was just too stiff, and there are limits on what an animatronic can do.
I understand that, what you mean.
If they really push some sort of, my joints are completely broken and screwed up, maybe.
That's what I mean. I think they could have really broken up a lot of him and make him so damaged that more damage than what the puppet is.
Yeah.
Having said that, like, the puppet looks remarkable still. For a puppet, Jesus, it's probably one of the best puppets I've ever seen.
Legacy's work, incredible.
And there's a moment on the breakdown where they actually puppeteer him walking to the terminal, like moving his arms, and that entire thing is untouched. Like, it's the real thing, except the face. There was, like, you can see them with rods and a lot of wires trying to puppeteer him, and he's really dragging himself through the console, and that's all real. It's remarkable how good that
love
looks.
That bit.
That bit looks amazing. Now, I've already said that I don't think it looks very good. I think it's a bit uncanny. I don't think it's perfect. I think maybe it's like 90% there. I think they probably needed more cooking, maybe a bit more time, maybe a bit more budget to try to get it to work. Or maybe it could be that the deep learning algorithms are still not really refined enough to make this happen. It was always going to be a difficult task because he's dead. There's no way to really do it. And there's not a lot of record. Also, even the sculpt from Lord of the Rings is not going to help because he's so much older on that film. So it's not even easy because this is 1979. Like, he's so young on that film. And and he doesn't have a lot of other films that look similar to that look that he had on that film. So this was always going to be a monumental task. But man, when I watched the Visual Effects Society breakdown, which is not public, unfortunately, I'm going to keep saying that. It's not public. I hope it is someday.
Okay.
I just feel that it's remarkable because they have created a node in Nuke called Master Neural Rig. And this is a node in Nuke where you have, in Maya you have these rigs where you have eyebrows, eyes, mouth, this, you have all the sliders. They actually made this inside of Nuke. It's amazing. I couldn't believe when I saw this. And they have the character on Nuke, and he's there. And then they can actually manually animate with the eyebrows and the mouth inside the compositing application itself. This is like science fiction shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is
and just
really
to
good.
Jump in there, Hugo. The reason why that is so amazing is because just everyone needs to remember, in the past, doing some kind of neural stuff or deep fake or machine learning training for this kind of facial animation work and digital human work is very black box.
Oh,
you
yeah.
kind of feed the training in and you get something out, and every visual effects artist will know that a director has notes, and for some of the early machine learning stuff, you couldn't really change things. So what Metaphysic has done, and they also use this on here, with Tom Hanks, where they were able to sort out eye direction. That's often the thing that's wrong with uncanny, or what results in the uncanny valley. So where the eyes are looking can be a real marker for how convincing a character is. Yeah. So absolutely. And then to do it in tools that visual effects artists are familiar with.
Oh, Nuke, It's remarkable. It's remarkable. And I can't emphasize enough how much of a revolution this is, because Nuke is incredibly flexible, and it's a really outstanding. You guys know I use it a lot, and I'm renowned by using Nuke. And Nuke is like really, really a pipeline tool. You can really create very advanced pipelines by yourself inside of it, either by Python or by C++ or by TCL, like the old language that it has. And you can create your own nodes. You can create your own pipeline, and very robust pipelines you can even be created by a single person. It's really that deep. It's really a pipeline tool, to be honest, for compositing. And the way that they've approached this, having all this getting fed, of course they had the head-mounted camera for the performance of the actor that played the old home. They had another actor playing him. They fed this performance into a CG sculpt with machine learning of all the performances of him, and then to feed this into Nuke, to this slider box, really, to this node, two nodes, this node and another node is for the eye. So they had one node for the master neural rig, and then the other one was for the eye direction. Thousands of results that they've had to produce, and then they could just like tweak from one to the other. So the concept is remarkable. The pipeline is remarkable. Hopefully it gets awarded by somehow, this pipeline. Hopefully, I think it's nominated for the Special Visual Effects Society. I believe, no, maybe it is not. I don't think it is.
Mostly in relation to here, I think. And it's not for here, it's a new technology award. So Exactly. So I hope it gets awarded because, yes, the result, no disrespect to anyone, was not achieved in my personal view as a visual effects artist. I don't think we got there. But I can't wait to see the future of this, because I think this is just the first step. And I am sure if they change the film now, I'm sure in a few years they will tweak it and it will look better and better. And somehow it will become even better. And I think in the future movie, I think they will nail this. This is really the path to go. I think this is a remarkable tool that they've made, but it doesn't really completely work this time, I think. No. And just to pick up on something you said about how since the film was released, they've got some more money to update Rook again.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that Fede... Okay, let me just share a personal story about what happened at View Conference. I get to interview a lot of great people in the industry, visual effects artists and filmmakers. But when you get to go and meet a director, I'm super nervous to do that anytime ever.
Why, Ian? You're famous. Come on, don't be like that.
I'm not famous. And I went up to Fede in Turin at View Conference, and I had a spare magazine, and I said, I'd love to give you this magazine. And he goes, oh, I've already bought it. And so that really blew me away.
That was
really good for my ego.
That's amazing.
But also, this is why I was mentioning right at the beginning of this episode, I felt like he's a much more honest and open filmmaker than I probably have observed with other ones.
Yeah.
Because we got straight into how he thought the film looked and the visual effects. And I asked him about Rook. I said, well, I really thought everything looked great, and probably the most controversial character was Rook. And he goes, yeah, well, we ran out of time, basically, which is what every visual effects person knows about. Yeah. And then he told me, now this is in October 2024, that they were fixing Rook, right? Redoing the shots or changing some shots. And I was like torn back then about whether I should tweet that or talk about it or whatever it is. Then, like 5 days later, Fede did his presentation at View and shared that fact on the stage. And so, that makes it more public, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I still didn't share it because I thought it was a bit useless to talk about without showing it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the twist, Hugo. I, too, have seen people compare the original Rook and the Blu-ray Rook.
Yeah.
And there's something going on with these comparisons currently online. I'm not sure whether it looks better or worse. And also, what that means is two things. One is it doesn't look better, right? Or the Blu-ray that the person has acquired isn't the fixed version. It's just a transfer that looks different because transfers can be tricky, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or the person has a streaming copy, because they're usually comparing it to something they've grabbed from streaming, which did or didn't have the fix already done to it.
Yeah.
I honestly believe, unless we can get some sort of definitive comparison from Fede or Metaphysic, that it's going to be very hard to judge side-by-side comparisons, because no one's from Fox or Disney is going to make it clear which one is which.
No, of
right?
course
They're
not. Of course not. Of course not.
Offer that up. And so we're in this kind of weird world where there's going to be people saying, oh, I'm so glad they fixed it. And then they show you the comparison and you go, not sure about that one. Right.
But the comparison...
See how you go.
Yeah, the comparison I found is, I don't know if it's the real one, of course, because I don't have... of course, no one will ever be able to see the cinema version, because that's gone. Now it's a digital version, unless some country has a 35mm print of it. There is no, because I know that some countries still project films. Some countries don't have digital. So maybe there is a 35mm print somewhere of this film, and that would be the definitive first version of this film.
Yeah.
The digital version that is on the cinema would always be updated, even if it's now a new... Imagine if they would bring it back to the cinema now because of the Oscars, or if they sometimes do those things. They bring it back to try to gather some momentum. It might be the updated DCP already. It might not be the old version that we've seen. So it's going to be very difficult to track down the old version. The Blu-ray version that I have looks like the old version. It does, because I saw the screener from Disney Plus. It looks different. Now, when I saw them side by side, I did check myself, and I saw them side by side. I saw major differences in the actual look and feel of the eyes, the mouth, and everything. So it's not just lighting or slight changes. I saw major differences on the eye line and on the mouth's position and on the general facial anatomy of both versions. So I believe that I've seen the two different ones. I think the new version, to my view, if it is really that's the latest version, if it is, because we'll never know really, it does look a bit better. I still don't think it looks perfect, and I don't think it will ever look. But I think it will never look perfect. I think the only way to make it look perfect would be for you to deploy a full CG pipeline where you would have to have the actor, because he's dead. It's not possible. You would have to scan the real actor, which is not possible. You would have to scan the actor, do an entire pipeline with shading and lighting and texturing and compositing, and then transfer that into the puppet. None of this is possible because it's not alive. So I don't think that will ever be fixed because you just can't do it. It's not really because then we go back to the uncanny valley because you don't have the real physiognomy of the actual face. You can't. It just misses something. There's something missing.
Yes,
and I don't think it will be fixable.
Yes, within those limitations, Legacy and Eric Barber and Metaphysic did incredible work. And
I think so too.
It's a fun addition to the film. Like, just although people have reacted badly to the character even being there in the first place, I think it's a fun kind of twisty thing in the film, and I kind of liked it. But
I'm sure it helped to put bums on seats because people want to see it. I'm sure it helped also to make people aware of this film and to make people know about this film. I am certain some people went to see it just to see this. I'm sure, like even in streaming, to go and check it out, you know.
Yeah.
So, man, what do they say? Bad publicity. There's no such thing as bad publicity, right?
That's right. That's right.
So it always works out.
Yeah. Let's move on to another creature that also came from Legacy FX and then also received digital treatment.
Ian, I'm so sorry. Before you move on, I just wanted to say one last thing because I love this so much. It's a little small trivia thing. Because I love old... You've been on my studio. I love old cameras, as you know, old video cameras. I love that for them to film Rook on this old CRT, they actually went and got an old JVC camera from the 70s to actually film for real with the real tape mechanism to make it exactly like if it was from the 70s. And they did that on the movie. Of course, funnily enough, the camera broke down halfway through. And so the camera broke halfway through because, of course, it's a camera that is 30 years old. As I have also many cameras that have broke down in my possession. So they had to they only filmed a bit of it, and then they eventually had to use a real normal camera, like a modern camera, and then they had to do compositing to make it look older. But I love that the DOP and Fede just they had this obsession with it being perfect, and I love this would be what I would have done, getting a real camera from the time. It's amazing. That detail is amazing.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Two quick things on that.
Yeah.
There are some shots of Rook in the CRT looking footage or CCTV looking footage that I think look incredible. Now, you get away a lot with black and white and graininess. Yeah. And I'm going to say, I'm not sure if maybe they are complete metaphysic shots or animatronic shots or both again, or there's something different about those compared to the live action, normal shots of Rook. Yeah. So that's one thing. The second thing is there is a scene of Rook as the damaged animatronic on the control board, on the desk in pieces. And he's talking, and you actually see a little CCTV camera pointing at him. Well, that wasn't shot. That wasn't in the plate. And they realized because they had these CCTV shots of Rook, they would need to say, hey, we're actually filming him with a little camera. So guess what? Fede, who's a visual effects artist, was the person responsible for putting that camera into the final frame, which is a really cool little bit of trivia he shared at View Conference.
I didn't know
and
that.
And it's not in the magazine article because I think I'd obviously written this already before I went to View Conference, but I added it to an online excerpt that you can find at Befores and Afters, which has a before and after picture from that bit of, no camera in the frame and then a camera in the frame. So it's pretty cool that a director got on the box and did that shot, right? I think that is pretty cool.
I love that. I love him even more now. He actually also did. We're going to talk about that in a second, but he Before you were saying, oh, I didn't know if it was 3D Studio Max. He knows 3D Studio Max really well, and he actually worked in 3D Studio Max for this film to make the camera work for the space scenes as well.
Yes.
So he is an accomplished artist, and he probably knows a lot about compositing for him to be able to do that and make it look as good as it does.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story that you shared. I'm thanks for saying that. I'm a bigger fan now of him now than I was before we started this podcast. I love that.
Just because we've been talking about Legacy's work, I think we'll continue with some of the stuff they were principally responsible for. And the other creature that they were principally responsible for was the Offspring.
Oh my God. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
So when I watched the film, I loved the Offspring. I was convinced it was one of those creatures where they shot a man in a suit, but they digitally removed parts of him to make it look impossible that a man would have performed this in the suit. Well, there is a lot of digital augmentation of the Offspring, but not at all what I thought. It is played by this Romanian basketballer, Robert Brodzinski, probably pronounced that incorrectly, I'm very sorry, who has a particular body shape and neck shape. You know, he's incredibly skinny and tall.
His neck is so big. He's so big.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
But he's like so perfectly cast as the Offspring and so perfectly performs some of these shots. And then Legacy's work on this suit is just, it's beautiful. It is like, it's like a person who, I would say it's a creature effects designer's wet dream. And then a person who loves watching creature effects films, wet dream as well. Honestly, the Offspring and the way it's played by this basketballer, I just love it. Now, forget about whether I think the creature deserves to be in this film and that sort of thing. I just, as a creature and as the creature suit, and then we'll talk about the digital augmentation later, it just works. What do you think, Hugo?
I think it works fine. The reason I was saying disgusting is because he looks absolutely horrible.
And scary. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's this mix of the Prometheus architects with like a skinny dude and an alien with a tail, and it's like, oh my God, it's like they mushed 3 different creatures into one. It's absolutely disgusting and really creepy. The baby is also fucking, it's so creepy. The baby, so creepy. So this entire thing goes to, it really reminds me of the creepy creature from Alien Resurrection, yes, exactly. Thank you so much. It reminds me of that. Of course, that one was silly. It looked like a little baby and a crybaby. Yeah. So this is not silly. This is just scary. I was blown away when I found out, when I read on your articles that this was a real suit. I thought this was full CG, I'll be honest, because of the proportions.
Yeah, or some kind of more CG than that.
Yeah, because of the proportions and because of the impossible of his neck, or I thought it was heavily composited. Turns out like it's really not. And of course there's some augmentations with the feet and the hands, and the tail of course is moving around. Lower back has a few things, and the tongue, of course, the tongue is CG. But apart from that, like, well, I don't want to sound disrespectful. That's a lot of work. But apart from that, the base of the suit itself already looks remarkable on set. You know, I think it must have been amazing for the actors to actually work with this on set, to actually see this in front of them.
There's some story that Fede shared about not revealing the suit too much to the actors, I think, and then even Legacy not revealing it too much to Fede. And they were shooting like second unit on a different set, and they saw from their monitors what he looked like. And so they all ran across to like, what? Is this what he's going to look like? Oh my God. You know, so...
No, it's proper creepy, and this entire sequence is proper creepy with the baby and the acid, and the whole thing is just like pretty horrible. Really a big surprise. I thought the film was over. I really thought when I first saw it, I thought it was over. They got to the ship, it's done. Then they have this entire third act, which is just like bonkers. It's so super bonkers.
Yeah. Now, WetaFX did a significant amount on the Offspring,
Mm-hmm.
especially, of course, when the Offspring is attacking Rain and when the Offspring is exposed to the outside vacuum of space and begins disintegrating, right? They've done a lot of CFX work on its skin. As you say, they've added a few things to its back and its tail, and the more dynamic shots of it attacking is CG work. They've cleaned up the feet, which always looked a bit like shoes, because that's just how they were. And a really cool thing that Weta told me recently at SIGGRAPH Asia in Tokyo was there were some scenes of the Offspring kind of coming towards Rain in one of the sets where the lighting wasn't quite working and it wasn't quite showing him coming out of shadow and into light and whatnot. And WetaFX built their own machine learning relighting tool to relight the Offspring from the onset lighting to, add in the kind of mood and ambience that Fede wanted. And I kind of thought maybe this was something done in Copycat, in Nuke, but Weta has gone and written their own thing, right? So I don't have too many details about the tech, but that's a really cool tool that is aimed at helping a filmmaker deliver even more moody ambience to a scene and help sell the horror nature of the sequence. So that is one of my favorite kinds of visual effects things, Hugo, where we're not just doing huge, crazy stuff just for the sake of it. It's helping the filmmaker tell their story. So that was something.
And I am so happy to hear that. Obviously I know all companies do this, but I don't think no one in this industry contributes more to the pipeline and the world of visual effects as Weta does. Like the amount of papers that they publish and make public in either SIGGRAPH Japan or SIGGRAPH Asia or SIGGRAPH, the regular SIGGRAPH, it is mind-blowing, from their technology of water for the Avatar and now this, and even before we saw all the work they did with Will Smith's CG character on the film from Ang Lee. I just feel that this company is their sharing is just amazing. They really push the industry forward. I really wanted to give a shout out to them because they've been doing an amazing job by doing that, by not leaving it just indoors and just putting it out there so that the industry develops. I love that.
I mean, Mari, deep compositing, that's WetaFX, right?
I know. They are just so good at this, and they share so much, and I love it. I love it. Yeah. And they are so nice as well. I was I was so happy to go to the booth on SIGGRAPH Asia, and they were so kind. They gave me chocolates, they gave me like coffee, they gave me a mug. I was so happy, and the chocolate is really good. It's from New Zealand. It's really, really good chocolate.
Yes, Whitlam's chocolate. It's incredible. Okay.
Oh, you know that as well. Okay.
I might have got some chocolate too there, Hugo.
Everyone keeps telling me about this chocolate. Everyone tells me that this chocolate is really exquisite, and I've never seen it before, but it's so good. So good. I'm assuming you guys have it as well, since it's relatively near New Zealand, I guess.
Yeah.
Relatively near.
All right. Turning to the face huggers now, Hugo.
Yes.
Once again, a brilliant combination of practical work and digital work. In terms of practical, Weta Workshop. We love them too, what they do in terms of concept design and then actually manufacturing, fabricating these things and dealing with animatronics. And then many of the face huggers were also digital ones by ILM. Yeah. As we said right up in front, the face huggers in the first films, and gosh, even in Prometheus and Covenant, are scary. I'm not sure I was blown away by the staging of the shots in terms of scariness here. And that probably just comes from the fact that we've seen them so often, right?
Yeah.
And
there's so many of them as well.
Yeah, they looked great. And as I say, there's great practical work, great digital work. In depth in the article, one of my favorite things is that there's this picture of the team. They're so proud of their creation. I really love that one. But yeah, what did you think of the facehuggers, Hugo?
I thought it was terrific. Now the facehuggers, I think you're right. Like we've seen them to death. They're not gonna scare anyone. It's too much. I think the only moment that I gagged when I watched the film, when I was like, ugh, it was when they took the facehugger out of one of the main characters, and you see the big tongue coming out of her mouth, and it keeps going and keep going and keep going and keep going. It's so long. It's like this super long mouth, super long tongue that just keeps going, and it's so disgusting. It's like, ugh. It's just really brought me like, oh my God. But this of course heavily promoted as practical. Of course, they kept showing the whole thing radio controlled. They even show the radio control huggers everywhere. I thought that obviously we know that most of them are CG and some of them are practical, and there's an amazing merging of all of them. And in fact, in some of the breakdowns, you actually see that they have a hugger there and it's being puppeteered. And then you see, when you see the wipe, you see that they actually ended up replacing the whole thing with a CG one. That happens a lot on this film, on a lot of sequences and a lot of sequences. But I must emphasize to everyone that, without having the practical one, you would never really get the other one looking good. So there's a lot of that on this film.
Yeah.
And that's why they look so good. There is a couple of huggers that really you see that they are practical, but I think it's fine. I don't really mind seeing that mixed in the shot,
That's an interesting point. And we have discussed this previously, I think, when we've touched on films like Jurassic or Starship Troopers, where sometimes the practical, if it looks a bit hokey, it's really actually okay, right? Like, because it's sort of beloved practical effects and creature effects, so people forgive it. Now, when it looks silly, that's when people start going, oh, well, I'm glad you replaced it with CG, or I wish you had replaced it with CG. And, sometimes suits look like they're made of rubber, because they are, so they should be replaced. And occasionally there's one or two hokey things with the facehuggers, which I think it totally works in Romulus. But if there was full of those, then we probably, wouldn't be so forgiving.
And I think there's one particular shot where you actually really notice that one of them is a radio control car. You kind of notice because it's a bit stiff and it's just going around. But I don't mind it. I feel it works really well. And I'm like, didn't got taken out of the film at all. I don't only notice it on the second time I watched the movie anyway. I think Veta did an amazing job. They did 73 of these. It's just an enormous amount of work. And with these guitar tuners and cables to move it, and they were so happy to do this because they never, as I understood from your article, they never did the aliens like facehuggers before. And I also think Fede did something that we've never seen before. We saw them in large amounts because we've never seen swarms of facehuggers. This is the first time we've ever seen that on Alien, which is really cool to see all of them attacking, especially that corridor shot where they go through the door. Also, we saw them on water as well. Underwater, in water, going through the pipes, going against them, and which is really remarkable work because they had real huggers there on the middle of the water with the actors for them to interact. But then it's an amazing work that they've made here to actually replace and put a CG hugger in the middle of that water hugger and actually patch sections with CG water as well and keep some of it real. When you look at the breakdowns, it's really astonishing work there where they've large sections are CG water, others are real water, and then one hugger is real and the other hugger is CG, and you keep seeing the breakdown and you're like, wow, oh my God, this is so complex.
Pretty great work for ILM there.
Yeah, it's an amazing work.
I will say the remote control ones, we talk about the marketing of these films.
Great story.
As far as I can tell, someone randomly at Weta Workshop just suggested that. I use that as the headline quote, which is, why don't we just put a facehugger on top of a radio controlled car and drive it around? I mean, it sounds obvious, but no one had really done that before.
No.
And I think, it resulted in great reference, a really good story to tell.
Oh, yeah.
We feel like there is one you can see like that in there, but
I see one. There's one. Unless they did it in CG on purpose to make it look like a radio control car, which could also happen. I don't know. It looks, maybe they got instructed by Feta to be wonky, make the CG wonky.
Yeah,
it could be that as well. But I think I spot one. It's great.
Okay, another sequence that we have to talk about it, but actually probably is the scariest sequence in the film, is the Chestburster. Now, again, we've seen Chestbursters, and the one in the first Alien is probably most horrific. I actually love the one in Prometheus as well. I just think that was really well done.
It's very good.
Yeah, Alec Gillis is the creature effects designer behind this work. And as far as I can tell, they really have done this is all practical side of things for that particular Chestburster sequence. There are definitely probably paint outs and maybe other sorts of augmentations done in shots surrounding it. There's an X-ray sequence where she looks at her body through an X-ray, and that's an ILM shot, which I also really love. But the actual chest bursting moment is horrific, bloody, sort of takes a bit longer to happen, which I think is a nice difference. And Alec orchestrated that one using great puppeteers on set and, just nailed it, I think.
Yeah.
And curious, it really is a very, very practical looking one in the days where you probably could achieve that with the brilliant digital visual effects.
Yeah, but they I think it's the perfect. I think it actually was the perfect choice because it's very intimate. The camera is really close.
Yeah,
I think the DOP and the director really worked really well to be really close into the action, and it's. I think this is a perfect choice. Why not do it real? Because they've done this before. They know how to do it. It's really funny to see behind the scenes because the actress is using this kind of fake body, which is half of the body in the front.
Yeah.
And so that she can be lying down and still have a body, but actually she's underneath the body there so that it can be broken up. And then my favorite part of that sequence is when which I've never seen before, the Chestburster comes out and then his head starts to become full of blood, like a red liquid.
Yeah.
That is my favorite part of that. And the sack as well. There's this extra sack that comes out of it as well. Absolutely disgusting and just really well made, really well puppeteered,
When I talked to Alec about that, who basically runs his own studio called Studio Gillis now, and he also runs Pro Machina, and we'll talk about that, which deals with more miniatures. The change in the head of the Chestburster and the sack, with like Fede said, look, I want it to change color, and Alec is like, well, can we just do that in CG? And he's like, no, make it happen practically, and he did. So the innovation again in what these guys do is just brilliant. And
I would have never believed it. Like, and I'm a VFX artist. I really thought this was CG. I was blown away when I read your article and I read your interview, and then I saw the pictures and the footage and the fact that there's no breakdowns and it's not even the Visual Effects Society breakdown, which means that it's not a lie. It's not. Otherwise, they would have. If it was CG, I'm sure they would have. They would have sent and submitted it as a character because they send it to everything else. They've submitted everything else. Why would not submit this? Would be weird. So I think that's the fact that it makes it that it's all real, because otherwise they would have done it. I was blown away. When I first saw the film, I thought, oh man, this is really good CG. I cannot believe that it's real. It's just so well made. It's intimate, it's scary, it's really bloody, and also the lighting is amazing. You see all these flashes of yellow coming through and passing through the ship. It's because the ship was kind of like in disarray because the controls were off and the ship was about to hit the hangar. It was amazing.
Yeah, Chestburster, one of the most successful, I think, effects in the film. And also, you're watching the film, something's happened with the facehugger. you want this to happen, right? Like this is it's in the trailer. It's like I don't feel like we watch that many films anymore where the audiences are dying to see something, and the Chestburster moment is that. Don't you think, Hugo?
Yeah, I do. It is really good and really well made, and props to everyone involved. It really showcases that you can still do some amazing puppeteering these days, and I'm always a bit sad that we've kind of lost. Sometimes we've lost that way where we don't make those choices on films anymore because we just immediately go to CG, and this just proves that it works. You know, it's for certain things it works just fine. I really loved that this is on the film. You know,
another effect which kind of passed me by when I watched the film the first time, but which involved a hell of a lot of work, is the lab mouse being crushed but then reanimating itself thanks to the black goo. And that was a sequence orchestrated by Tippett Studio via stop motion.
Yeah.
We kind of see it in the film only via CRT monitor CCTV. So it's an interesting thing in terms of how hidden it is as a shot. But I did write about it in the magazine. Unfortunately, didn't get approval to show any images from. So it's in the mag, but with no great pics. And Tippett, I mean, the amount of work they had to do to build this mouse, they used Alec Gillis's mouse kits or like fur kits to do it, actually, which is really interesting. But the amount of work to build it and then to show it crushed at different stages, they even got Hugo parts of the set shipped over to them from from Hungary, from Budapest, sorry. And, you know, so they could match it. And one of the animators, like, is even in the shot with, like, a lab coat on and a glove. And, like, the amount of work that Tippett went to make this happen is insane.
Yeah.
And because it's shown as a bit of a time-lapse reanimation, it doesn't look stop-motion-y, right, at all.
Yeah.
So very, very effective sequence. Goes by quickly, but I kind of love that Fede said, hey, let's do it this way. And Tippett Studio, they've been sort of jumping back with stop-motion for some of the Star Wars series. Very recently on Skeleton Crew, they, you know, did this big Mama Crab, which looks fantastic. And they keep getting asked by some of the Star Wars series makers to work on stop motion. But yeah, that's a fun little sequence in the film, isn't it, Hugo?
It is. And I really wanted to emphasize how much work went through this, because you can see it on the article. Of course, you guys should go and read it. But the biggest issue with this, and I don't think people realize, it's how hard do you even start to comprehend how to do this? Because imagine, like, the rat is being squashed. Like, first the thing squashes the rat, and the rat is destroyed and it's dead. And then the piston goes up, and then you have this body which is dismembered. Now this body has to reconstruct itself to the real rat again. This is incredibly difficult to calculate, because once you destroy something, how do you bring it back on whole without making it look fake? Like, it's so difficult to do that because you don't know where the breaks is going to be. And props for them for, like, basically going backwards in animation, trying to get the breaking to look like a real destruction of the body, but still being able to animate backwards to try to reconstruct the body of the cat, the rat. All of this, well, the mouse, and all of this with the directive from Disney: do not use real mouses here, and also do not use parts of mouses, do not use anything real, nothing, because obviously Disney has, fortunately, have that approach. This is so difficult, and the amount of work. This is the only moment when I read your article, this is the only moment that I was like, oh man, amazing that Tippett did this, but god damn it, it would have been so much easier to do it in CG. I'm like looking at this like, man, this would be such an easy simulation to do in CG. But I'm glad that they did it. I'm happy that they did it, and it really looks, the artistry in it is impeccable.
finally, Hugo, I want to talk about, I guess it's space environment shots.
Yeah.
This film, in some ways, is cleverly staged to be on the planet's surface only, when we're meeting Rain and her friends and family, her family being the android. And then it's staged inside the space station. And that's, partly a budget thing, I think, and to feel claustrophobic. And, we can keep all the action in the stages and in the space station. I think Fede does a great job, however, of opening the film up by having views of the planet, the rings, the journey to the space station. Obviously, there's a big action sequence with the Offspring and Rain and the crashing of the space station into the rings. These things were not shot practically, although we'll talk about miniatures in a second, and there's also a bonus Patreon episode about miniatures. The space work is a mix of ILM and WetaFX. ILM building the space station, doing some incredible work for spaceships and shuttles, and actually taking some of that miniature work and recreating it in CG. I actually really love the space shots in the film. They're classic sci-fi ones. What did you think, Hugo?
They look beautiful, and this was all. I really love that they have almost no light. I think that's my favorite part of it. As much as the CG artists probably hate that because they can't show their work, most of it is backlit, and the space station. Actually, the funny thing is that it was actually much more lit, and this was like both Fede and also the DOP, Galo, trying to tell them, no, switch more lights. Oh, take that one off as well. Oh, take that one as off. They just kept removing lights and removing lights and removing lights. Just leave it so simplified that you just see this massive outline of this space station, and it just gives it scale. It makes it so huge because of that, the lighting. And also it really harkens back to the original films, both Alien 1 and Alien 2, where it wasn't very lit. I think darkness is darkness, space is dark, as the DOP usually says on the interviews. Let's make it dark. And it just makes it like they're just really beautiful scenes. They're epic. They're really huge. They're beautifully lit with backlighting, amazing work in terms of modeling, amazing work in lighting and rendering and compositing as well, and composition as well. They really set the stage, especially the beginning, because when you start the film, the film feels very much like a small, intimate film with them trying to get off the planet, and then they're talking, and then they're having this problem with the hours, that she has to work more hours to keep her on the planet, and the mines, and you just have this intimate problem, and then they're talking with all their friends. You never see anything, and then finally when they go up there, they go to space, and they go through the clouds, and then they see the sun. It's just like a stop moment. You basically just get blown away by that sequence.
Yeah.
And that's really where the film starts. Okay, here we go. This is an alien movie. Let's go. It's really good.
I also love the crash of the space station as part of these space shots. Now, that was orchestrated by WetaFX. One thing that's kind of cool is they take the time to show these rings and the ice in the rings and rocks and stuff really smashing into the space station.
Yeah.
And I think you could kind of see it, that maybe Fede had in his mind that maybe in a different time and world we would have done this as a miniature shoot, and really destroyed the space station. So much so that WetaFX, when they were taking the model and adding to it to enable it to be destroyed, they actually filled up their model with paraphernalia and crap, which is what you would feel a real model miniature. You might put popsicle sticks in it and things like that.
Yeah. So
they would feel that with that. And then they even, when it was exploding and breaking apart, they didn't just sort of have bits and pieces simulated in Houdini coming out. they actually modeled them to move and animate and bend and warp. And I think that just adds something to the final look of this effect sim explosions.
And it's funny that you're mentioning that, because we know these days that visual effects has advanced so much that everything looks good. Everything looks good. And I had that experience when I was at Visual Effects Society award event, nomination event, and there was like 20 something submissions for the modeling. There was like a lot of submissions. And no, I think it was like 15. That was the other one. It was like 15 submissions, and they all looked stunning. All of them looked stunning. But only 4 can be voted. But the thing with this is that this sequence is so well art directed, and it's so beautiful, and the staging, the angles, the camera angles, the lighting, and the silhouetting of the scene is so artistically well made that this is now the differentiation, because they all look good, but this just looked so different from the other stuff, because it has a lot of detail, but it doesn't, because you don't see it. But then you see the detail when it breaks. It's really well constructed. Also, throughout the film, you see these rings all the time. You see the rings on the beginning, and then you see the rings through the windows. Then you see the momentum of this, talking about the rings and the timer, and you keep saying you don't really know what's going to happen. And then it starts to break it up section by section. I love that sequence when Rook is going to die, and then it opens up in front of him, and he actually sees the rings as well. And the whole thing is making a hole. This entire disintegration of the ship, of the space station, section by section, almost like being sliced in the bottom, is really a very inspired art direction moment on the film. And I think that's why it was nominated for Best Modeling in the Visual Effects Society, because it's just stands above everything else, because it's so well staged and so well edited. It also lasts for a long time. It's a pivotal section of the entire sequence on the third act. And people really glance over these kind of shots because we've seen so many of them now. But this is the entire thing. We saw this entire film. It has so much stuff, and it didn't need to have this sequence. But then this sequence just it elevates it even more, because it's so well made. I think props for them, ILM and Veta, for what they did here. It's a great shot. Great shots.
Totally. And just to round out the work, we must mention the miniature stuff done by Ian Hunter, a very famous model photography miniature effects supervisor person who's done incredible work, originally from Hunter Gratzner to New Deal Studios. And now he's formed a company with Alec and also other people called Pro Machina, and is still contributing miniature effects work. And on this film, they made the Corbellin hauler, which is what they use to travel up to the space station. There's also a probe seen in sort of the beginning of the film, where they're grabbing the alien, basically. Now, they shot miniatures. They didn't necessarily use all of the miniature shots that they shot. They certainly used miniatures as a base for building CG vehicles. And Hugo, what we're going to do is discuss all of that in a bonus episode for Patreon supporters of VFX Notes. But we wanted to make sure that we highlighted the work right now, because it is really fun that they went and did miniatures for this film.
Yeah. And you can hear all about it if you join Patreon, and this will be only for Patreons. It will be exclusive, and I think we have a lot to talk about because of the choice of making the miniatures, then what happened actually on the film, and what ended up being on the film. This is going to be a really interesting conversation, I think, about this section. Yeah.
Well, it's been a really interesting conversation. I think we've hit the 2-hour mark on this one. You go.
Well, we actually are longer than the film itself.
Not unusual for the VFX Notes show. But yes, thank you for joining us and sticking with us, and thank you for coming to our new season-based offerings at VFX Notes. Please go and check out the Patreon at patreon.com/VFX Notes, where each week you really are going to get a lot of bonus stuff. and you'll soon see this bonus about the miniatures on Alien Romulus. Hugo, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ian. I'll see you all later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.